Alright, we are looking at some properties of parallel lines. When you have two lines are parallel, let's assume that these two purple lines are parallel. I know my lines aren't completely straight. If you ever take another line and intersect both lines, it is called a transversal. So when you have a transversal that cuts through parallel lines, then there are angles that are corresponding or complementary to each other. So the first thing I needed to show you is what I mean by corresponding angles. If we look at all of the angles that are formed with this intersection right here and number them, I'm going to call them angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the other intersection, I'm going to call these angles 5, 6, 7, and 8. Notice how I went clockwise around to number them clockwise around. So the measure of angle 1 and its location, notice on the intersection it's the top right angle. Okay. Yeah. It corresponds with angle 5 on the other intersection. It's like in the same location.
Right.
When you have an angle that's in the same location, so angle 1 and angle 5 are in the same location, angle 2 and angle 6 are in the same location, angle 3, 1, 2, 3 is in the same location as angle 7. You get the idea? Angles that are in the same location just on the other intersection are the same measure. For example, if I tell you that the measure of angle 1, the measure of angle 1 is equal to 80 degrees, then that means the measure of angle 5 is also equal to 80 degrees.
Right.
Okay, they're corresponding.
Right.
Okay. The angles that are adjacent to those angles are what are called complementary. So angle 2 right here is adjacent to angle 1. It's right beside. That's what we mean by adjacent. It's right next to it. So when we say it's right next to it, if angle 1 is 80 degrees, angle 2, the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180 degrees minus the angle 1, the angle that's right beside it. It's always the angle right beside it. So 180 minus the 80 degrees that we already know is angle 1 is equal to 100 degrees. So if angle 2 is 100 degrees, now that we know the measure of angle 1 and angle 2, we actually do now know all the measures of all the other intersections because we can use that property of corresponding angles. So if angle 2 is 100, that means angle 6 is also 100. Yeah. And notice that angle 2 is right next to angle 3. So that means those two are complementary to each other. That means angle 3 is the 80 degrees. And that means angle 4 then is 100 degrees. Just like angle 2 was. And in fact, if you know what angle 1 is, you automatically know what angle 3 is as well, because these are also what are called vertical angles. They're directly opposite of each other.
Right.
Okay? So whenever you have a transversal across two parallel lines, you'll only ever have two measurements. The measurement of one angle and the the complement of that angle. So whatever 180 minus that angle is equal to.
Okay. So this one.
Okay, here we have an example where angle 1 is equal to 4x and angle 2 is equal to 2x minus 6. Now, I'm not going to write, well, I can write angle 1 and angle 2. Notice that those two angles are complementary to, or they're adjacent to each other, sitting right by side each other. So you know that adjacent angles have to always equal 180 degrees.
Right.
So it would be like saying this, 4x plus 2x
minus 6 equals 180.
Exactly.
Okay, I know how to solve that.
The two angles should always equal. Yes, what would you have to do?
Plus the 6 over there.
So we're going to add 6 and we move that over here.
And then this would be 6x
Yeah, we need to combine those two terms, right? So you get 6x is equal to, and that's 180 plus 6, so it's 186.
I got a calculator.
Okay. Resume this recording. Okay, so after you divide by 6, what did you get when you divided by 6? X is equal to what?
31.
31. All right, now the question that you'll have on A+, will say, it wants to know what's the measure of angle 6. Make sure you always ask, be careful to look to see what the question's actually asking for.
Oh, for angle 6.
So it wants to know the measure of angle 6. Well, look at where angle 6 is located.
And this could
Is
go
it
to this one.
yeah, it's correspond to angle 1.
So
look.
4 times 31.
Yeah.
That's your answer.
Angle 1 is equal to 4x, so you have to replace that x with 31. 4 times 31 is equal to what?
124. And they said that was wrong.
Okay, so we got to jump ahead of ourselves here. Angle 6 actually corresponds to this angle here. Notice it's in the same location, it's in the bottom. So you would actually have had 2x minus 6 is equal to angle 6, and you would have to replace the x with 31. So it would be 2 times 31 minus 6 to figure out what angle 6 is equal to, which is equal to 56. So the measure of angle 6 is equal to 56, and that's what you would type on A+.
Okay.
Many of the questions on A+, though, use two sets of parallel lines, which just can be confusing, with two transversals. So looks like there's lots of lines on the page. But they'll only number the angles that actually pertain to the question. So you might have a question like this. They tell you that that line BF is parallel to line CD, but the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 5 equals 116 degrees. What they want to know is what is the measure of, they'll have like an angle here, they called it KDH in this example, which happens to be, KDH, which happens to be this angle down here. Here's K, D, and H. Alright, so this is what we're trying to find out. Well, let's look at what they give us. They give us the measure of angle 2, and they give us the angle of measure 5. Well, they don't actually give us the angles measures. They just tell us what they add up to. So they said this whole thing right here is equal to 116 degrees. Now, I'm going to go over these lines with a different color just so I can isolate just the lines we need to pay attention to. So we really only care about the green lines there with that one transversal. Do you see the 116? Oops. Back that up here. Do you see that 116th is this angle right here, and what they want to know is what's this angle over here?
Okay.
Well, are those corresponding angles?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the 116 would correspond to this side over here. But that side over there is adjacent to the side that we don't know. So that means that they're complementary. If you take 180 and subtract 116, you should get your missing angle.
$64. Good job.
All right. When you have questions that want to know which of the statements are true, you need to make sure that you don't assume that something is parallel or that the angles are the same unless they use special symbols to show you that the angles are the same or that the lines are parallel. One symbol to show that lines are parallel without stating that their lines are parallel is you may see a little triangle on the line. Or sometimes it's just a V, like sometimes you'll see two V's together here to show that this line is parallel to this line, and one V here and one V here to show that this, like line 1 is parallel to line 2. So if you see those symbols, or sometimes they color them in, and it makes it look like triangles on the line, then that's how you know if two lines are parallel if they don't specifically say it. But don't assume that they aren't unless you see those symbols. Another way to tell if lines are parallel is if you do see two lines and you see the transversal, if the line on the transversal has the arc symbol showing the measure of the angle and you see that it has the same number of lines, that corresponding angle, angle 1 and whatever this angle is, angle 5, are corresponding. Because the arc is the same, then that means the angles are the same, therefore the lines are parallel. Here's the other symbol that you might see. You might see a line like this and two arcs to show that those two, what would be corresponding if they were parallel, are not the same angle, so therefore they're not parallel.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the only two symbols that specifically show you that they're parallel. Another, I shouldn't say it's not the only one, remember that the 90-degree symbol, those are the same, so therefore they would be parallel lines as well. Here's another type of question you can have on A+. They give you two parallel lines with the transversal. They tell you that two angles, which happen to be corresponding angles, are equal to some number, in this case 100. Now, if they're corresponding angles, we know that they have to be the exact same measure. If we know what they're added up to, all you have to do is take that number and divide it in half. So that means in this example here, angle 1 would equal 50 degrees, and so would angle 5. Because if you take 100 and cut it up in half, then each angle would get 50 degrees. Now, that's not what the question, though, is asking. It's asking for what's the measure of angle 3. Well, angle 3 is adjacent to angle 1, therefore it's complementary. You just take your 180 degrees and subtract 50 to get your angle's measure. So the answer would be 130. So you may have several questions like this. Simple questions, don't make it too complicated.